All right, welcome in. That Steelers trade we talked about earlier this week has been updated. And guess what happened next? Jayden Daniels MVP odds dropped. So did Washington's playoff odds. Makes me think this is somewhat realistic, or more realistic than 2 days ago, okay? Plus, Steelers GM Omar Khan said something at training camp that we need to talk about. Can you go for it and not sacrifice the future? Those two ideas are related, Newbear. We have the best Steelers takeaways from training camp, and we want to know tonight, how much has your opinion of Aaron Rodgers changed since he came aboard? Here we go.
This is the Noll Road Podcast.
All right, welcome in, Dawson and Newbear, the Noll Road, where every day we talk about the Steelers getting back to the glory days. Thanks so much to everybody for checking out our channel this week. The views have exploded since the start of training camp. If you could hit that subscribe button as well, you get a chance to see when we upload and all that. We'd love you for it. Might even buy you a beer if I see you at the game, or maybe the draft party next spring, something like that. But man, Newbear, exciting stuff. We talked about this story for 20 minutes on Tuesday night. It's advanced as Terry McLaurin has officially requested a trade. Dude, does this feel real?
No, and I'm not saying that from a perspective of Terry McLaurin at all. I'm saying it from the perspective of, it doesn't feel real that we could get Aaron Rodgers and he could still have something left in the tank. It doesn't feel real that he might actually kind of be cool. It doesn't feel real that Minka could be gone and we could heal this quickly because of everything else that's here and how it looks on the field. It doesn't feel real because of all the kind of pinch yourself stuff that goes along with everything else that's happening. The Terry McLaurin stuff feels really real, and I'm looking forward to unpacking this.
I mean, I guess it kind of starts with Vegas saying if he does play for another team, the Steelers are the favorite. It was plus 800 the other night. Maybe we should check back in with that. But that makes me feel like, the market is speaking. Agents are talking. Teams are talking.
Sure.
Obviously, Vegas has sources inside the NFL that they depend on for information like this. So when I see Vegas odds for next team, I that's when I start saying, okay, well, this team has the inside track. But it's got to happen, right? So I think requesting a trade is one thing.
I mean, Myles Garrett did, and then you got every dollar you ever wanted.
Now, this is the tough part, because when a team decides we're going to trade a guy, they don't want to advertise that. It drives the value down. Their leverage goes away. So we're in this purgatory right now. Like you just mentioned, Myles Garrett or Brandon Ayuk. Does McLaurin really want out? Would Washington actually trade him?
Mm-hmm.
And I think they would. And again, that goes to Vegas adjusting those playoff and MVP odds today.
I saw one of them, it actually doubled. He went from 7-1 to 14-1. And when you look at some of that stuff, the simple, flat, and plain off the top is, this actually doesn't have anything to do with Pittsburgh or Seattle or anybody else. It's if Washington trades Terry McLaurin, then they're having the same conversation Pittsburgh's having about wide receiver 2 and filling that hole with Terry McLaurin about wide receiver 1. Because now you're talking about Debo, Noah Brown, Luke McCaffrey. You're basically saying this quarterback that we see on this rise, who could be like Patrick Mahomes and win MVP, throw 50 tutties and take us to the whole way in year 2. You're basically saying we're not serious about 2025. I don't think the Commanders are, in their minds, they're not going to be willing to do this for anything less than a 1.
Well, I don't know if they'd get a 1. So you're saying they would just, be in a holdout standoff with McLaurin and see if he's going to punt like over $1 million a game to sit,
or just be really, really, really difficult in terms of like, well, but if it's the Steelers and you get McLaurin and now you're a Super Bowl team and it's the 30th pick, that's basically a 2. So what if it was a 2 and a 3 or 2 2s or 2 3s? But they're going to try to drive that hard bargain to be like, bro, we got Jayden Daniels, and if we have Terry McLaurin, it's scary Terry, and we're going to be the best offense. I mean, they went from not being relevant at all. Like, Jayden Daniels was the number 2 pick in the draft, and then you're in the conference championship.
Yeah, and you have to take advantage of his rookie window. So I could definitely see Washington holding that line as an entry negotiation.
Well, remember too, they did a ton of moves in the offseason to try to protect him, to try to give him more weapons. Like, they're in their camp, they believe they're all in. Like we're talking about the Steelers.
Yes, but from Pittsburgh's perspective, there's no way you could have an internal conversation that you gave up a 2 for DK Metcalf,
Sure.
and now you're going to give a 1 for Terry McLaurin. The fan base would roast you. The media would destroy you, and it's just not fair. McLaurin's 2 years older. They have very similar production profiles.
Yeah, 2 Pro Bowl, each of them 2 Pro Bowls, 1 AP2. The difference is McLaurin has been a 1,000-yard guy every year. I mean, he was a plug-in.
He's the better player. Yeah, but he's 2 years older. I think that
better is an interesting word. More consistent. They're different players.
I would rather have him.
You would rather have him because he's more scheme versatile. Whereas DK, this is what's going to be interesting to see, because for all the excitement that we have about DK jumping over dudes, going triangle button and high point and stuff, the reason he wants to be here and truly be wide receiver 1 is he wants to run more of the route tree. He wants to be a 150 target, 100 catch guy, and that's what's there on paper. So what gets fascinating about this isn't just that they give up a 2 for him. It's that they also were willing to let George Pickens go for a 3. Yeah. And when you start looking at he's much younger, now that's where this thing gets really interesting, because it's not just about 30, meaning 30 years old. It's also about 30 million big ones.
Yeah, and I think that's huge. And I think the NFL has digested that over the last decade, that if I'm trading for an older guy that I'm also going to have to pay, or a prime guy that I'm going to have to pay, there's no like 2 2s and 2 1s. Right. And, I think Cleveland and Houston might have done the last one there for Deshaun Watson. It was instant buyer's remorse for them. So, I think that the compensation is coming down, because what Washington gets out of this is an opportunity to take money instantly into the trade market on their O side and try to improve their secondary. So it's the pick that you get back, but also the cap space, and it's the double whammy of having to give up, like, really, a first round pick. That could be a young player that could bless us for 5 years with cheap labor, and I'm trading this for a guy who's probably going to be done in the NFL. At least he's out of his prime in 2 years max. He's never going to make it to the Pro Bowl after 2 years of this thing.
It's interesting though that you say that, because this is wide receiver U. I mean, every single one of these guys is basically plug and play NFL material, and McLaurin has been from day one. And the type of game that he plays, particularly, I mean, if he comes to Pittsburgh and just you extrapolate what he's done in Washington, put that alongside DK, that's a game that ages pretty well. Unlike DK, who's been so dependent on the physical elements, Terry McLaurin's a complete wide receiver. Terry McLaurin just had a who's who, or a Where's Waldo of quarterbacks, very similar to what Pickens, Deontay Johnson, what everyone's seen here in Pittsburgh, talking about, maybe why guys haven't been more consistent, why guys haven't made more plays since Ben was here, right? When you don't have a guy that you trust and a guy that you know what you're going to get under center, like we have now with Aaron Rodgers, it's a different conversation. And Terry McLaurin's a guy who I would have if you get him for a 2, there's no bugaboo about going 3, 4, 5 years and just saying, we're going to saddle up with this guy and him and DK are going to run alongside. It's almost the same type of thing that the George Pickens experiment becomes in Dallas with CeeDee Lamb.
Well, Washington's going to ask for a 1. If I'm Pittsburgh, I counter with a 3. And if this deal gets done, it will either be
in the middle.
It'll be for either a 2 or a 3 and a 4. And Pittsburgh has plenty of comp picks to facilitate something like this. I think what's different about the two teams, and they're both in win now modes for different situations. Washington can justify to itself, we got Jayden Daniels for the next 15 years. The Steelers have to be a little bit more desperate, because you might have only Aaron Rodgers for 1 season.
It's 150 days. It's crazy how compressed this thing could get. Now, there are rumors. We're talking about all the vibes, the immaculate Latrobe scene that they're already talking about. Maybe can we get you back next year? Hey. But like, as we go through this and we peel the onion on it, what is really fascinating to think about is we've had a couple of conversations. Are they all in? They signed TJ, or they signed Aaron Rodgers. Are they all in? They signed TJ. Before that, the trade for DK. If they go get Terry McLaurin, there is absolutely no question this is a Super Bowl team, that they're all in, that it's Super Bowl or bust, that if you don't, it's not about winning a playoff game for the first time in nearly a decade. It's not about divisional round. It's not about getting to the conference championship and then getting the break speed off of you. It's Super Bowl or bust. And for the record, if they get Terry McLaurin for a 3 and a 4, or even 2 3s, it's an absolute steal. Yeah. He's a legit, and him and DK together, good luck, buddy.
Yeah, I mean, you still got to figure out a way to beat Kansas City, but you'd have a better team than you'd ever had as you're facing them. So I think at that point you get Terry McLaurin, you're at least the second best team in the AFC, and by the end of September you might call them the best team in the AFC.
Yep.
So I think you got to do it if you can. And that kind of will help us segue into the next topic here on the Noll Road. Go ahead, hit that like button, subscribe, maybe even the bell button. You'll get alerted whenever we upload or go live here before too long. So this goes to the topic, and it's a great segue because I want to impress upon anybody in the audience, specifically the GM Omar Khan and the head coach Mike Tomlin. So this is an organizational talking point that they're trying to establish. We're hearing more media around Pittsburgh. Let me say parroting it, although that might sound a little bit disrespectful. I get it. The GM says something, he establishes philosophy, yep, and you want to be supportive of it. You want to be optimistic. But what I would say to Omar is you can evolve and refine this thing, and you don't have to pick one. Look at what the Rams are doing just a few years after winning the Super Bowl. They've rebuilt a lot of their teams. I mean, Aaron Donald retired. Von Miller obviously isn't there.
Dante Fowler, Jalen Ramsey, go down
Cooper
the list.
Kupp. I mean, it's a completely different team. And they traded away their draft picks, their first-round picks for the next 2 years. And guess what? They figured out a way to get back into it because organizations problem solve. They figure out ways to get things done. And when you lose picks, it actually frees up salary cap space because you don't have those first round picks maturing and getting ready for deals. So when those years hit where you would be paying a draft pick, you have a bucket of cash that you can go pay free agents. So I would say be very fluid about this. I think it's a trap. And a lot of NFL teams operate this way, that, what we want to do is make the playoffs every year, and it sounds like a great goal. Let's be a playoff team every year. But I think it's actively handcuffing you. That's where I come out on that deal. So I don't think you can. Try to win now, go for it, and not sacrifice the future, right? You have to sacrifice some assets from the future. Is that cap dollars or is that draft picks? But if you're not doing that, then I just think the odds are stacked so massively against you.
So for the record, you're saying Steelers are not and cannot do both?
No. You're not actually doing both. I think that's marketing.
So they're all in. Rodgers, TJ, DK. They're doing things. They're spending money. They're trading picks. Twos, not ones.
Okay. Where's your wide receiver 2?
Mm-hmm.
And where's your great offensive
line? So there still are holes to fill.
Yeah.
That's where you're drawing the line in the sand.
Yeah, and I think McLaurin would be such a difference maker, second wide receiver, although he'd be your number 1, that he would mitigate your offensive line issue, right? Like I can say, hey, you got maybe an average, maybe a top 10 offensive line. You put McLaurin there. You have Caleb Johnson running the hell out of the football as a rookie. I think that could be the best team.
It's not even you can't double them both. It's just now you have to defend the whole field.
Yeah.
And the Steelers pride themselves on is depth, and that is roster, team, organization wide. Because they believe that Roman Wilson is going to be the guy, and that's a 3rd round pick. That's not nothing on a wide receiver. You talk about top 100. I mean, Trey Sermon was a guy who was an 88th pick at one time coming out of Ohio State after Oklahoma. Right? You look at these guys that are supposed to be pedigree guys that you have to hit on, that are depth pieces for you, and a guy like Trey Sermon ends up being, this is his 4th team in 5 years. Like that's not what the Steelers do, right? They invest. They actually are stubborn to the point of maybe even hanging on. It's the opposite of Belichick. Right, where Belichick wants to get rid of guys too early, we're hanging on to our guys and developing our guys as long as we absolutely possibly can, because we drafted them for a reason. The standard is a standard, our system is our system, and eventually the light's going to go on and it's going to click. And when you look at this team, I think we focus on wide receiver 2, or we focus on these very specific things that we don't think they have, or we don't know if they have the answer yet. But when you look at the other side of the ball in particular, and we talk about edge, right? That's all in-house stuff. They drafted TJ Watt. Right, they look at Sawyer and Herbig as the future TJ Watt. Right, they did the opposite though in the cornerback room. They went and they moved Minka. They moved mountains to go get Ramsey. Right, and then they go sign Slay. Right, so that's the free agency side of it. And what I'm trying to like really impress upon this conversation and ones like it going forward is that this hasn't been the case, because they just want to draft and develop. And then the splashy stuff is just like, that's not who we are. So to be able to do that and hit on your picks, you Pittsburgh Steelers, our guys, and at the same time spend money, write checks, add to that as needed. let's not forget they still got $20 million to go do stuff with for the next few weeks.
Yeah. No, I love that. And I that turned a light bulb on for me. I appreciate that perspective because I would like to say that you can, but you have to be willing to be like they've been over this last 4 or 5 months consistently. For example, you say, well, let's sacrifice the future today by giving up more draft picks to get McLaurin and maybe put ourselves in cat purgatory to get McLaurin. And you go for it this year, right? It's like, obviously you can see the gray beard, the 96 Marlins, right? Or was that the 97 Marlins? They rented a championship.
Yes.
And what did they do to get that? They traded a bunch of prospects. They won it. And what did they do? They took their championship players, turned them back in for prospects. So you trade for Terry McLaurin now, you trade for DK Metcalf, you win the championship, Aaron Rodgers retires, you don't have a quarterback, you say, okay, let's turn these players back into draft picks. Look at this. Now we're not sacrificing the future, but you can't pick one lane and try to stay rigidly in there or try to be in both lanes at the same time. You got to swing back and forth. And damn it, it's not turning an aircraft carrier. Okay, this is a fighter jet with the tools and the freedom that is in the collective bargaining agreement. Any trade can happen. Any player can decide anything about his contract. Any team can decide anything about how they want to give up assets to get other ones.
Conceptually, I want to very badly agree with you because what you do when you do that is you're signaling to your fan base that we are serious about winning and winning is the only thing, Al Davis level stuff.
And damn it, if we can't win, we're going to be bad this year and get a hell of a pick. And I know Pittsburgh doesn't want to do that. Sorry to cut you off.
No, it's not just that they don't want to do it; it's that they haven't had to. Because when you go non-losing season, it's not just about not bottoming out. It's about truly believing, because of Ben Roethlisberger mostly, but then the different iterations of Ben Roethlisberger. They were a defensive-led team, and then he ascends, and then they have the killer bees, and there's different iterations of him, almost like careers within careers, right? Teams within teams, eras within eras. We're talking about one guy. It's been completely different. It's been fluid, to use your word, every single year since he hurt his elbow. And when you go through the machinations of roster building and you talk about saying, I want to both win now and build for the future, but the reason that I would be not just comfortable but confident in, because they've done things differently and they've signaled change, it's working if you look at this roster and believe like they do, that if Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back for year 2, they had a first-round grade on Mason Rudolph, and they see enough of some composite of Ben Roethlisberger, Josh Allen, hell, Tom Brady, if you really get into it when you go to the 6th round, in Will Howard. So they're looking at this saying, we have 12 picks. If we need to trade up to go chase Arch Manning, we can do that. What I hope that they do right now is that they truly believe in the things that they've said, the things that they've done enough to go put their cards on the table. I don't think they should give up a 1, but if it was a 1, would you do that?
I would.
You're the GM.
Yeah.
Now you got almost no questions left.
I'm a hell of a negotiator, Newbear. So when they say 1, I say 5, and I'm going to battle them. But if we get to the Monday of week 1, we're getting ready, then I'm calling them up and say, okay, you son of a bitch, here's your 1.
Okay. Sorry,
Yeah.
Sorry for cutting you off. No, if DK, when you look at it and you look at them, coming out, they're 2 years apart, but DK left after 3 years at Ole Miss, and injuries accelerated that, where he was just like, I'm going to go take my shot because I'm 6'4", 225, and I might actually be Superman.
Yeah.
And, Terry McLaurin is a guy, that is 2 years older, but they come out in the same draft class. And when you look at them being on the same timeline, the numbers are spooky close. And the 2 Pro Bowls and the 1 All-Pro 2 and all this other stuff. But when you put them together, the magnifying effect of that is fascinating to think about, because if it's a 3, 4, 5 year deal and it's $100 million, cap's going to go up. Oh, by the way, there is also a plus-up effect, and potentially, like we talked about with Slay with JPJ or Ramsey with JPJ, what can Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf help raise Roman Wilson and company? Yeah,
and not only raise them, but temporarily put them back to maybe a spot on the roster where that they belong. Right?
They had Roman Wilson covering kicks today. It was just one-on-one drills. It wasn't in team, but
that's what I like. Young guys, 3, 4, 5. Right? Force me. I don't have me doing you a favor or hoping that you grow into this role. Force me to put you in an elevated role. And I like those 3 guys, the 3, 4, 5. Okay. I think the next really angle on this. It's a separate topic, but it goes to like what would allow you to get the job done. You get McLaurin, and then I mentioned Caleb Johnson earlier, but I think we need to talk about this running back room and how badly maybe they need Caleb Johnson to figure everything out. I think the best storyline
He needs to figure one thing out.
Yes, and that's the best storyline of any position battle right now in Latrobe, isn't it? Because
It's
if he
freaking terrifying.
yes, it's terrifying and exciting. If he can get this, and we know he cares,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we know he's smart and he's tough.
Yeah.
It's a timing thing. It's a reps thing. I don't know what's going on with this pass pro. It's looked pretty ugly so far.
Sure.
But I think it is one of those skills that you can get a lot better at.
Well, and the most important thing with it is willingness. So he has the willingness to do it and to get the job done, but to put in the work to figure out how to do it. And he's got the best babysitter in the league. I mean, you played that rep a couple weeks ago from Jaylen Warren, and I'm sure we can cue it up again here as we go through this, where you literally said, I don't think I've ever seen a back do that in a pass protection. I mean, Jaylen Warren isn't just finishing plays; he's sending a message. Like, do not even think about trying to mess with 8 if I'm on, the King's watch or the Knights watch.
Perfect position, perfect leverage, incredible athlete.
And Caleb Johnson has all the things, but most importantly, he has the willingness and the want to learn and to get the job done. So as we go through this, we talk about him, we assume he's just going to be able to slot into that Najee Harris role. What people forget is that, for all his warts and all the things that he left wanting on the way out to California, I mean, Najee Harris caught 70 balls as a rookie. Najee Harris won a lot of fantasy leagues. And Caleb Johnson has come out and said, I pride myself on not just my toughness, not just the physicality, not just the things I get credit for, but I think I'm actually faster than you think. I think I play faster than I run, and I can catch the damn ball. And if he's in a position where he can't keep Aaron Rodgers clean when he's asked to do that, and if he's on the field on third down, he's running a route, that dictates other things in pass protection that have nothing to do with him, because they don't have to worry about him as part of the math.
Yeah, and it's incredibly frustrating for fans because you're watching an inferior runner get these carries just because he can pass protect.
Sure.
Does remind me of old Ezekiel Elliott and Tony Pollard trying to get on the field, and for 2-3 years the Cowboys wouldn't put Pollard on the field much. He finally became a decent pass protector at 205 pounds there his 4th year, and the offense took off. I'm not a coach. I'm not a protection specialist. Maybe you could speak to this, but as a fan, I definitely want the better runner in there. Let's build an offense. Let's add an H-back. Let's put a tight end there to help where the pressure is most likely coming from, because I'm not going to take 3.9 yards per attempt just because the guy can cover the quarterback. So which would you rather have? The full running back, good in pass pro, under 4 yards an attempt, or the young guy who's electric, threat to make house calls whenever he gets the ball, but he's a turnstile.
The challenge with this conversation is that we're talking about protecting 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers. If this was 35-year-old Aaron Rodgers, certainly 31 or younger, the pocket movement, when people talk about athleticism within quarterbacks, it's not just about the Lamar Jackson stuff or the Josh Allen, jumping over people stuff. It's about what Aaron Rodgers, what made him so special was the movement in the pocket and the ability to extend plays, to put what might be the best arm that's ever thrown a football to work in so many different ways at every level of the field, right? Because you go from being under attack to attacking every level of the defense because you escaped. He might not have that magic, or he certainly won't have 18 weeks worth of it, and you would like for him to be able to save whatever is needed for a playoff run. And what you're going to see, I think, at first, even if Caleb Johnson improves over time, because of what we saw with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier. Remember, young Bijan, you want to talk about fantasy football and people being frustrated. I mean, it took him a minute to get to a place where he was trusted. And those quarterbacks, we're not talking about Aaron Rodgers in Atlanta. So I think what you're going to see is Caleb Johnson coming off the field on third downs, and Jaylen Warren have a very specific role on this team, and he'll do it very, very well. And then what you're going to have to see is Caleb Johnson make a play on a screen or a rail route or some kind of fun thing that they do with him where it just becomes undeniable that you have to take the risk and you have to use him as such a weapon that if you come hunt my quarterback, we're just going to kill you at 20.
Yeah, so yeah, the premise there is if he can get this figured out, and I don't know what a realistic goal is, maybe mid-season before you make some sort of a declaration about how good he is. But if you can keep that guy on the field, that's a huge key for this offense being unstoppable. And we're talking about it. Some still shots right here. He went 0 for 3 against different guys and in backs versus backers, and he's working with it after practice with Warren. But the great news here, as Faribault will show us in this tweet, he's taking it very seriously. I think we can hope for the best there. I wanted to show you this while we're on running backs. What an epic Trey Sermon run here with the offensive truck stick in the hole.
Vertical integration of weird flex.
Get this guy the ball. You say he's been on 4 teams in 5 years?
Yeah, I mean, he was a top 90 pick. And I mean, he was a big-time recruit, and he was a big-time player at 2 different schools. And he just was one of those guys who, I mean, when you look at the quarterbacks alone that he played with at Oklahoma, and then you talk about the CeeDee Lambs or the Kennedy Brookses and the other guys, that it's not even recruiting over, it's just recruiting well, because that's what those schools do. That, I mean, look at Texas, all the SEC schools and the Big Ten schools that recruit like SEC schools, and you get in these rooms and the running back rooms are crowded, and the wide receiver rooms are crowded, the tight end rooms are crowded, and he still showed enough in the COVID year where he finally got a shot to kind of be the guy, and he was over 100 yards a game at Ohio State after he transferred. And he just hasn't been able to figure it out, while also finding himself in some situations where guys around him have risen, and the Niners make changes, or you get to Indianapolis and you're basically waiting for Jonathan Taylor to roll an ankle. And at the same time, he's still a top 90 guy.
Yeah, that's you can definitely tell the talent there. Wow.
And he's got almost no tread on the tire. So now you're looking at a guy who has both, this might be my last chance, and I'm still young and hungry and healthy and fresh, right? So that I mean, you could play that one on loop for a minute. Just the sound of those pads makes me so happy that we're hitting August this week.
Yeah. All righty. Let's talk a little bit about Aaron Rodgers. Here he is talking about center Zach Frazier's responsibilities.
Every now and then the picture's a little fuzzy still, so I'm still working some things out. But Zach is so freaking smart. He's making some calls for me. Told me this. I said, "Don't get used to that." I said, "It's simple. I'm going to be making the calls for you." Every now and then the picture's a little fuzzy still, so I'm still working some things out. But Zach is so freaking smart.
Okay, this is great to have a center you can trust like that, stepping onto a new team. I think that part of this discussion is fun. Love your thoughts there, but also, I wonder how many fans out there had an idea of who they thought Aaron Rodgers was based on the national media coverage and some of the things that have been done.
Vast majority.
A lot of people thinking like Terry Bradshaw. How many people are thinking, I still hate this guy, but I hope he plays awesome? And how many people are like, you know what, Aaron Rodgers actually kind of likable, just misunderstood?
Well, and the word we're going to use is evolve. Like, things evolve. Like, you want it to be fluid year to year with the roster. What about human beings? And let's talk about we're talking about 20 years. We're talking about, half of his lifetime in the National Football League. You think you don't change? You think you don't change going from Green Bay, replacing Brett Favre, falling in the first round, and then winning 4 MVPs, winning a Super Bowl, making one of the greatest throws, some of the many great throws on anyone's top 10 list.
Going on a darkness retreat.
And then the New York Jets thing
ayahuasca
happens. You're Super Bowl favorites and your body falls apart. For the first time, your body betrays you. And now all the things that led you to go to a school like Cal come roaring into a dark room under a house in the woods somewhere. He's been in a very interesting place. And the COVID stuff, was what really put people off, because he took a stance where you could look at what he said and say, everything I thought about this guy was true. Right. And what's also true is that people are fucking incomprehensible. Yeah. And as we go through this thing, the motivations that you might have had in years prior, or the lack thereof, can be replaced by something else. And for him, especially as you get toward the end of this journey, the football side of it, with so much more life, you hope, out in front of it, the perspective changes because he doesn't need this. He doesn't need money. He doesn't need another Super Bowl to cement his life. He wants to be. He chose this.
He loves football.
He wanted to play for Mike T. He wanted to be in a place. If he wasn't going to do this in Jacksonville. You know, this was going to have to be a pedigree place. Either go across town and play for the Giants to give the double birds back to the Jets, or something. That was what everyone thought he was going to do because that's who they think he is. They think he needs that level of attention. And he's brought a very serious amount of that on himself over the years. But, you know, at the same time, this is a guy, my whole family being from Chicago, we hate all of them. All of them. Even the one who had, you know, Mikowski, when he rolled his ankle, we were pissed that he gave Favre a chance. And, you know, I just, I think back to when I was a young person in marketing, I had an opportunity to interview him. And I called him in a hailstorm in a Home Depot parking lot to interview him about some Nike cold weather gear. And he was like, obstinate is the word I would use. He didn't want to keep answering this. It's a long sleeve thing. It's supposed to keep me warm. What the hell do you want me to say? You know, it was not a pleasant exchange for the little blog that I needed to go fire off into the ether. And when you have those interactions, and beyond like the never meet your heroes stuff, because you never know what the circumstance really is. But when you already kind of hate a guy because he plays for your rival team, and then you have one interaction with him, that might be all you need. It might be all you need to see the you don't even need to get to the Netflix documentary to confirm this bias that you have for however you've arrived at that point. But what I think is really special about this is when you get to a place like Pittsburgh at a time in your life and in your career where it's different than it ever has been before, then you're willing to do things differently. He's willing to mentor Will Howard like he wasn't willing to mentor Jordan Love.
Yeah.
That's growth. Mm-hmm. And that comes from a place of Brett Favre not doing it for him and also being pissed that we didn't go get a first-round talent for me to help me go ascend. This isn't that.
No, it's not. And I'll tell you what really helped, I think, is the way that he handled the Terry Bradshaw criticism this week. You know, just to really humbly say, Terry doesn't understand me. I'm not going to take offense and strike back. I'd love to build a relationship with him. You know, I think that's like, I think it's genuine. You could say, well, that's PR 101. He's endearing himself to Steelers. But, you know, you mentioned his age, and it's been a really, really long journey. And he's been a lot of different people throughout his NFL career.
I mean, just look at his hairstyles or his throwing motion.
Yeah.
Remember when he came out of Cal and the ball was in his ear hole?
Yeah, and, you know, like 4 or 5 years ago when things got bad with Mike McCarthy, or I guess 6 years ago, I really thought that was rock bottom for him because some of the backstory on that was he was a major pain in the ass. He was a coach killer. But the thing about broken people is if they're open-minded about things and they want to get better, like there's an incredible amount of tools, whether it's spiritual, the self-help industry. And I think he's really tapped into that. And now I think we're starting to see some of the fruit of the different person Aaron Rodgers has become here at middle age.
Well, and let's also not forget that the word you just used, talking about being a broken person, you're talking about spiritually, you're talking about mental health, you're talking about all these emotional things. He was actually broken physically, and he'd broken a collarbone. He'd had some pretty serious injury, but he was able to come back from and play through all of those. The Achilles was the first moment where he had to really look Father Time in the eye and get reminded of his undefeatedness.
That's great stuff, Newbear. Looking forward to reviewing your comments, interacting with you throughout the day. Any comment that we get here on the Noll Road, we're going to jump in there and chop it up with you. Let us know, has your opinion changed on Aaron Rodgers, or are you just hoping that he can play good football for you? We're back next time with more Steelers headlines and analysis, and until then, we'll see you on the Noll Road.